Hey there everyone, this is Michael Dougal, the Nootropic Reviewer, and after using Modafinil on and off for the past 7 years, I can share with you it is absolutely incredible for boosting motivation, helping you stay focused, especially when you're sleep deprived, but it definitely comes with some severe side effects. And I'm also going to share with you a bit about my experience and some personal strategies that I'm using in order to eliminate or minimize the severity of some of those side effects. And the first side effect, and this is the most common one that users probably aren't able to escape by any means, unfortunately, and that are the Modafinil headaches. It's like they start at the front of your head, they work their way back, but the headaches usually kick in later on in the day. If I were to consume 100 milligrams of Modafinil, which is what I'll typically do twice per week, I wouldn't experience the headaches until the later portion of the day. And that's one of the warnings around Modafinil. It's like you definitely want to take it earlier in the day because it will mess with your sleep. Modafinil is an interesting supplement in that it's not like caffeine, where you use caffeine, you'll notice the energy boost, you'll notice the physical and mental stimulation, although you'll only feel those effects for several hours. You'll come across arguments about Modafinil not being a stimulant and being a wakefulness agent. It definitely has stimulating effects, whatever you want to call it. And so with Modafinil, just be prepared for that. And with respect to the headaches, it seems that as the day progresses, the headache severity gets stronger and stronger. So what you definitely want to consider doing is to supplement with alpha GPC or some sort of form of choline while using Modafinil. I've definitely found that a helpful strategy. It seems that I don't get the headaches, I don't get the irritability as much if I were to consume alpha GPC, which is my preferred choline supplement. I've talked more about alpha GPC in this video over here. You can also consider supplementing with CDP choline, choline bitartrate. The point is just get your choline intake up, and you can even do that through ingesting egg yolks. And of course, the leading cause of headaches is actually dehydration, so make sure that you're drinking enough water. And I actually prefer eating water-rich foods. There's actually some research showing that eating water-rich foods helps to hydrate you even better than drinking water. And I will warn you that the effects, as well as the side effects that are associated with Modafinil, they're very inconsistent. You'll have some days where you're properly hydrated, you're taking your choline, although you'll get the headaches, and then you'll have some days where you don't experience any headaches despite being dehydrated. The second side effect associated with Modafinil is nausea and just general uneasiness you get about you. And this as well is more likely to take place in the later portion of the day. I especially find it does take place if I'm fasted. I notice like even my stomach will rumble when I'm not hungry. I'll feel lightheaded. Sometimes I'll feel a bit like spaced out and not wanting to talk to anyone. Although when you use Modafinil, just be prepared that you may want to consider avoiding other stimulants. Where people generally have bad experiences, especially with respect to nausea, is when they're ingesting Modafinil along with caffeine and they're having more caffeine than they would need to. So if you're somebody, for example, that only takes 200 milligrams of caffeine each day, but you use Modafinil one day, then I would consider just adjusting your caffeine intake a bit lower because of the fact that Modafinil is already stimulating enough and you don't want to be wired because it will make you uneasy and makes you horribly unproductive. The unfortunate reality with Modafinil is that you just have to wait for the following day. In some cases, you may have to even wait a couple days afterwards because sometimes the day following Modafinil ingestion, you actually feel a little bit slower and you're likely to feel irritable. As we know, what goes up must come down, and generally when it comes to nootropics, the stronger the effects are, the stronger the side effects are. Unfortunately, I found that using Modafinil at serving sizes less than 100 milligrams, although this is uncommon, makes it far less likely for you to feel nauseous throughout the day. And the third side effect are sleep issues, and it may be insomnia, it may be that Modafinil is messing up with your sleep or decreasing your REM sleep. There's one thing you should prepare for is that Modafinil works for a long stretch of time, like I mentioned, so use it in the early portion of the day, and most likely it shouldn't interfere with your sleep. But if it's one of those days where you know you're going to have an early bedtime, then I would definitely avoid Modafinil. And that's because of the fact that when you use Modafinil, you don't necessarily feel tired, you may not yawn, and so because of this, it'll interrupt your sleep. And for this reason, I'll typically save Modafinil for those very long days. And I don't necessarily mean longer work days, I mean days when I'm likely to wake up early, sleep later in the day. Unfortunately, with my lifestyle, there's some days where I'm up for 18 hours. Of course, there's some days where I may be up for 14 hours during the day. And so those longer days are days when I'll use Modafinil because I can just trust that by the end of the day, Modafinil will be somewhat out of my system. I'll actually be tired and be able to get to sleep. But one issue that I dislike about Modafinil is that even though I may have, say, 7 or 8 hours of sleep following Modafinil use, it seems that my sleep is not as restorative. I also track my sleep using things like my Oura ring or my Ultra Human ring, and they actually show me that my light sleep is increased and my REM sleep as well as my deep sleep is decreased, and we know that that's the sleep that matters most. And I have tried different forms of the phenols, like I've tried armodafinil as well as adrafinil, and I found that when I was using armodafinil, I was able to take naps during the day, but with Modafinil, I'm just too wired, I'm too stimulated that I can't seem to take naps. I've talked more about the comparison of modafinil and armodafinil in this video over here. Armodafinil I actually find very useful in some capacities, but I like that modafinil boosts my mood more and keeps me more focused during the day. The fourth side effect you're likely to experience when using modafinil is irritability, and for this reason you may want to just avoid being social altogether when you're using modafinil, because you will not have the patience for anybody, and these smallest things will irritate you. So it's sort of like being hungry, being dehydrated at the same time, being overly stressed out. You're still able to be productive, but when it comes to being around people, you'll find yourself too impatient to listen to them. You'll find yourself multitasking unnecessarily, and this is the aspect that a lot of people actually dislike about modafinil, especially when it comes to productivity. It's that modafinil, it might be great for those scenarios when you're just behind your PC, you're not doing anything that involves talking to other people, you're just doing like data entry work or organizing your taxes. Although when it comes to teamwork, when it comes to talking to people, you'll find yourself not be able to empathize with them, not be able to listen to them, not be able to understand where they're coming from. And so modafinil, it sort of like emotionally blunts you to some extent and makes you a bit robotic, but you also have decent energy levels for you to go ahead and finish whatever work you have required. And when I first started using modafinil, I didn't really know how to deal with this, but I feel like the more you use modafinil, the more you're aware of what it can do for you and what it cannot do for you, and you better get to know like which days you may benefit from using modafinil and which days you may be better off just staying away from modafinil. And it's really not a nice experience when you're saying to yourself like, I shouldn't have taken modafinil today because I messed up this specific event during my day. And I've also used stimulants like Concerta as well as Vyvanse, and I found that Concerta and Vyvanse pretty much did the same thing with respect to irritability. It seems like unavoidable when it comes to something which is going to provide you with that much focus throughout the whole day. And one of the things that I dislike most about modafinil is that I'll always be wanting to multitask. If I'm talking to somebody, I'll be wanting to play with my phone, and it just feels like your brain is running at 1,000 miles per hour. And I've tried many different supplements to help to like remove this irritability or lessen the effects of it when using modafinil. One thing which I have found somewhat effective is using L-theanine. If you were to use L-theanine at a serving size of 100 milligrams twice a day, you may notice yourself being a little bit calmer, and I've talked more about L-theanine in this video over here. And the fifth side effect, maybe it's not a side effect, one can argue that it's actually a benefit, but it would be a decreased appetite. Again, a bit similar to using something like Concerta or Adderall. You just have so much focus, you don't have too much of an appetite, and even when it's actually time to eat and you start eating, you notice yourself feeling very full. I've actually had some experiences when I was really excited to eat when I was using modafinil, but the food just didn't taste as good as it typically would. And for that reason, one can argue that maybe with modafinil, you could eat healthier because you're less likely to be concerned about the taste. I like the fact that with modafinil, I certainly don't have any urge to eat anything sweet or anything too fatty. Like I'll stay structured with my diet. Whereas I've used other stimulants and it's like at the later portion of the day, you completely crash, your discipline is gone. You want to indulge in the most fattening foods. Unfortunately with modafinil, I'm able to stay structured with my good routine that I already have in place. I have had some times when my stomach was growling, and you'll read about this online. It's like your stomach will growling as if you're hungry, but you're actually not hungry, and it's just another sign that modafinil could be messing with your stomach. And you'll come across a number of anecdotes out there where people will mention that stomach upset is actually their most common side effect when using modafinil. And outside of these side effects, some other ones you may want to be aware of are increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, skin issues. Those are somewhat common, and I would definitely be cautious around using modafinil prior to your workouts, especially if you're somebody that's doing high intensity interval training or any sort of high intensity cardio, because of the fact that modafinil already increases your heart rate. It'll just set you up for a very uncomfortable experience because your heart rate will be accelerating so quickly, and there are many supplements that you want to avoid using along with modafinil. So of course, do your research, make sure to only consider using modafinil after speaking with a general practitioner and making sure it's appropriate for you. I would love to know your thoughts and your experiences on the compound. If you want to chat with me one-on-one, you can message me on Patreon, and be sure to visit our Discord server, which has a 24/7 chat room. I thank you for your interest in nootropics and look forward to seeing you next time.